Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Hope Sessions podcast, where every week we want to give you encouragement through different means such as testimonies, dialogues with guests, along with diving into the scriptures and exploring the incredible life transforming truths inside it. So, with all that being said, here's another episode for you to tune into and listen to. God bless, enjoy the episode. So, let's just jump straight into it. I've got two stories that I want to share, I suppose, of my minimal interactions with Katie Taylor. The first one it would have to be, if you didn't know, that when I was a teenager, from the age of about 12 to 18, I was a boxer. And at the time, I trained in a club in Wicklow called Grange Con Boxing Club. And I used to train on Tuesday and Thursday nights for about 2 hours. Loved it. Had plenty of opportunities to spar and fight in competitions, and had some minor slash major success depending on how you want to categorize it. Lost a couple of fights too, so I'm not going to sit here and give you a glorified version of my so-called overwhelming success, But remember when I used to train in this club, Grange Con Boxing Club, um, people used to train in the hall, but then the ring was kind of off limits, like no one was allowed to train in the ring except two people. And one of them was a guy by the name of Ross Hickey. And the second one was this girl who I'd never heard of before, but her name was Katie Taylor, she's now a world-renowned phenomenal athlete, right? But I remember just there being such a quiet spirit about her. This guy Ross Hickey, you could say hello to him and talk to him, and he'd give you advice and he'd joke around with you. Whereas this girl Katie, like you'd say hello to her and she kind of, in a way, you kind of think she was snubbing you, but she wasn't. She's just a very calm, kept to herself kind of individual who's just there to train and doesn't really want to be interfering with anyone else. And then the second story I would have is so there's a conference that I used to go to every year, still do, but it's just not in Trabolgan where it would have happened. But the Summerfire National Conference. And Katie came to the last one, I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago, and she came down with her mom and her family, and anyone that knows me, like friends, family, they know that I'm not just a fan. Like I'm a number one fan. Watched all her fights, know what's happening, watch her interviews on YouTube, the limited podcast episodes that she's been involved in, like with Matchroom Boxing and a couple of other platforms that she's done over time because of part of her contracts. Um, but I remember at this conference, a couple that I dearly appreciate and love, Gavin and Judith Cassidy. They're actually the main kind of people around the Summer Fire conference, but they called me down to the tent where Katie was and came down. I got to meet her, and at the time she was in this two-match fight deal with a girl called Delphine Pursoon. So I got to chat with Katie, told her I'm a big fan, got to get a picture, and like it was a remarkable experience just to get to meet someone who I've watched for their whole career and admired as an athlete, but also as a believer. She's a born again Christian for those of you that don't know, and she's a very outspoken Christian at that. And she definitely lives a life that brings glory and honor to the Lord Jesus Christ, her Savior. And what I want to do for this episode is kind of be like, I suppose, like a fanboy, right? So I'm going to talk about her career, her success in the amateur and professional ranks, and break down some of the fights that I think are monumental to her career. And then at the end, I'm going to kind of close it out with a thought, to kind of inspire you. Maybe you're talented in sports or music or whatever your thing may be. I hope that you listen to the whole podcast episode, even if you're not a boxing fan. I think you will admire as you get to just hear the massive success that Katie has had, really how she's revolutionized the sport of women's boxing, you know. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dive straight into it. So let's dive into her amateur career. From what I know from watching her movie and reading her books, she started boxing at 12 at a time where women boxing wasn't even sanctioned by the AABA, the Irish Boxing Association, basically. Um, so Katie used to have to spar men, like not men, sorry, teenage boys or boys, and she used to have to cover up her hair because so that she could actually have spars and fights. And it's amazing because over the course of her amateur career, you know, She has won 5 gold medals at the Women's World Championships. She's also won 5 gold medals at the European Championships. And she's also won 5 gold medals at the European Union Championships. Now, and you're probably thinking, oh, yeah, 5 gold medals. Well done, well done. That's 15 gold medals. Do you know, for anyone that has boxed, it's your dream to make it to those championships, let alone even get on the podium. So the fact that she's won 15 gold medals before she even turned pro is an incredible stat, an incredible accomplishment that is definitely worth considering and pondering upon. And then obviously to jump straight forward, when I really began to take notice of who Katie was as a boxer, was definitely at 2012 Olympics in London. Just you just to see how she was able to box with her aggressiveness, her fury of punches, her ability to take punches and keep coming forward. It was just her work rate is just it's unmatched. And that's what really drew me in as a fan of boxing from the age of 11 or 12. I like it when people can go face to face, head on, trading blows, and just seeing who can stand the longest, really. And in the 2012 Olympics, it was an incredible journey for her because when she got to the quarterfinal, she fought a British boxer by the name of Natasha Jonas, who she would then go on to have. I would say you could kind of say some sort of a rivalry. It wasn't. I think she fought her a few times in the amateurs, and then she fought her once as a professional. She beat her for all her lightweight world titles. That was probably about 2 or 3 years ago now, I believe. Um, but she beat Natasha Jonas in the quarterfinal. Then in the semifinals, she went on to fight a boxer by the name of Mavzuna Shoriva. And then in the final, she beat a woman by the name of Sofia Ochivgava. I probably butchered her name, but that's how it's spelt. Um, and that was great. It was I remember Katie had her moment where she was celebrated as an Irish sporting icon and a legend because that's exactly what she is, and rightfully so. I remember there was a big parade homecoming for her back in Bray. There's a statue that was irrigated for her, so that she now is seen as a sporting hero in her local town of Bray in Wicklow. And then let's fast forward to the next Olympics, which was in 2016 at the Rio Olympics. And I remember at the time, as I was watching her in the quarterfinals, she fought a boxer by the name of Mira Potkonen. Um, and Katie lost the quarterfinal of the Olympics. It was an incredible accomplishment to get to the quarterfinal of the 2016 Olympics, but she lost it. And I remember watching that fight and just sensing that it just didn't seem that she was in a good headspace. Her ability to box, she was getting knocked off punches easily. She wasn't really able to get her hands going. And then lo and behold, everything came out in the media over the coming months and years. Now we know about the unfortunate breakdown of her parents, how they went through a separation. I believe it was a divorce, but I don't want to label it that. So it was a separation. And Katie's father then went on to remarry another woman. But I remember because Katie's father was with her in the corner for all her fights, all throughout her amateur career, and he would have knew how to calm her down, how to give her advice, and she was used to that. But at the 2016 Olympics, she then had different coaches, and when you're so used to a certain system of having certain people in place, it can actually affect your ability to function. And that's what I believe happened. And then after she lost at the 2016 Olympics, she went on to basically she went out to turn pro. She decided that she'd achieved pretty much everything and anything that she could in the amateur ranks, and I suppose it was only the right thing for her was to progress. It was to turn pro. There was nothing else really for her to achieve because realistically, when you think of it, the pinnacle of the amateur days is everyone wants to get to the Olympics and get a gold medal. Um, and when you get the gold medal, it's like, okay, I'm at the top of the Mount Rushmore, for a lack of a better term. And what else can I achieve here? So it was only a natural progression that she was going to go on and turn professional. And I love it because Katie, as most of us know, she's such a quiet, spirited person. And Katie, she reached out to who now is Eddie Hearn, who's one of the greatest boxing promoters. In my opinion, he's the best boxing promoter in the world right now. And she reached out to him on Twitter, and it's amazing because she literally just sent him a DM, a message, and I actually have a screenshot of it here in front of me. I'm just going to read it to you. Hi, Eddie. I hope you're well. I hope you don't mind me reaching out like this out of the blue. I've been seriously considering turning pro the last few months. I think I could do for women's pro boxing what I did for the amateur sport, bring it into focus and generate a serious interest. I already have a global profile and a great fan base. Of course, the pro game is impossible without a great promoter, so I'm wondering if you would be interested in talking more about this. Much appreciated, Katie. And then Eddie Hearn's response, which was, I think, it was actually the same day. Hi, Katie, I'm very interested. What's the best number to reach you on? And I love that, just how something as simple as a text, how she reached out to him, and then lo and behold, she's now been signed to Matchroom for her whole professional career, which has been an outstanding career so far, which I think she's probably coming to the latter stages now. She's probably got, I would say, probably a max maybe 2 years left, I think, just because she's getting into the late 30s now. And, obviously when the older you get, you kind of start to deteriorate, but let's not take away from the incredible athlete that she is at this current present moment in time. And so obviously she turned professional, and obviously as you start with the professionals, you kind of have to build a name for yourself, build a fan base, build a popularity. People have to see what you're about. So naturally, you're kind of fighting fighters who wouldn't necessarily have a great profile because you're trying to build up your profile. And that's what all promoters do. You're trying to make money out of your fighters. And how do you do that? Put them in with people who don't have great records in hopes that you can build up your record. And that's exactly what they did for her. And there's in Katie's professional career, I believe there's 5 fights that have determined, or they're the 5 most important fights of her career, period, amateur and professional. And I want to dive into them because I've actually, just before I even recorded this podcast, I've actually been rewatching all those fights, the 5 fights I'm about to dive into, and kind of give you context of what's happening and how the fights played out for you. Because maybe you don't know how her career is. She's undefeated. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Let me rephrase that. She's now only lost once in her professional career, which she avenged that loss to Chantel Cameron the second time around, which I'll dive into over the course of this. But I remember that I suppose the first most important fight of Katie's professional career was when she fought, I believe she's a Bulgarian, at Delphine Persoon for the first time. And that fight happened on the undercard of Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz. And if you're a boxing fan, you know that's the night where Anthony Joshua uh, fought a last minute replacement, and Andy Ruiz, who's a Mexican boxer, came in and just absolutely obliterated Anthony Joshua. Beat him so badly that I don't think anyone ever thought he was going to recover from, but that's exactly what happened. He did recover and he did avenge that loss, thankfully. But over the course of the lead up to this fight between Katie Taylor and Persoon, Persoon's team, they supposedly, from what I heard, they offered Katie Taylor's team £100,000 for the fight to happen initially before the fight was confirmed. And it's funny because I remember Katie Taylor's manager, he responded and said that Katie wouldn't even get out of bed for that amount. And that just goes to show you the amount of popularity that Katie had, that they were able to turn down a fight even with 6 figures, because they obviously got a lot more in the end. And I remember just in the lead up to it, like during fight week, there was a bit of controversy between both camps, Katie's camp and Delphine's camp, just regarding staying in the hotel. So because I don't know if you know, but in boxing there's contracts, and in the contracts it's not just necessarily weight, it's not just necessarily pay or rehydration clause, but there can be certain things like your staying accommodation. Like most fighters wouldn't stay in the same hotel as their opponent. It just doesn't make sense. A lot of it can be mind games. And there was controversy around that because they both ended up staying at the same hotel, and rumor has it that Delphine Persoon was asked to move to a different hotel, and that can happen. I believe that there was a clause in the contract that allows for that, because that's the terms and agreements that you agree to when you sign the contract. So it's not like it's a just a random kind of thing that happened. And then the fight happens, and it's amazing because it was a great fight. Delphine Persoon is a very, very awkward, tall, frustrating kind of boxer. Just her style of boxing, she kind of lunges forward. Her head is kind of going left, right, front, and back all the time. She's kind of trying to. She's always kind of feinting to her opponents. But I remember that during the course of this fight, Katie spent most of her fight on the back foot because Delphine Persoon just has this ability to exuberate constant pressure, and Katie struggled to find her range, which this didn't help Katie with her shot selection. So Katie's shot selection would usually be step forward, bang, 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 a fury of punches, combinations, maybe to the body, then to the head, and then back out. And then she kind of move and go back in again. It's kind of a common style of fighting for Katie because it works best for her. And I remember when I was watching this fight, Pursoon, she kind of reminded me like she was kind of like the Terminator. No, Katie was throwing everything in the kitchen sink at her, and yet she kept coming forward to Katie. She was very relentless. Got a fantastic gas tank, really. Um, her ability to remain her stamina throughout the course of the fight was incredible. Like it's just to think of it. Even I remember looking at it, particularly from round 6 to 10, that Katie remained flat-footed. So usually Katie in the first couple of rounds, she would bounce on her feet, because it allows you to go in and out while you're bouncing. That's why boxers bounce, so it's easier for you to go in and out rather than just being flat footed. But I remember from round 6 to 10 that Katie remained flat footed, and she was leading with the jab and moving, which is a really good tactic. So she'll jab and move left or jab and move right. Because what that does is it allowed her Pursoon to miss a lot of her punches as she was stepping into Katie. Katie was moving and catching her. And that because of that, it was causing Pursoon to get very frustrated. And I will say though, as much as I'm a massive fan of Katie Taylor, in round 10, Katie had no energy left. And she began to get hit with a lot of punches to the point where I thought she was going to get knocked out or knocked down or maybe rocked, but she didn't. And I believe that Katie, she done enough throughout the whole fight that she was already well ahead heading into the last round just because she was the busier fighter. And I know obviously after the fight, there was a lot of the top boxing analysis, like two guys in particular was what's his name? Carl Frampton and David Hay. David Hay was a heavyweight boxer. Carl Frampton was a middleweight boxer, I believe. And they both said no, they reckoned that Pursoon won the fight. But all I would say to that as a counter argument is watch the fight on YouTube. Like Pursoon, her left eye was like a golf ball. She had cuts on her nose, cuts below her eye. Like she was battered. And then Katie had a few marks, but nothing in comparison to the injuries that were sustained by her opponent. And obviously, and we all know now that Taylor won that fight on majority decision. And majority decision basically means that two judges ruled in favor of Taylor and the third judge ruled in favor of Pursoon. So so just to kind of give you a bit of context as to regards that. And then obviously because Katie won that fight, she took a belt from Pursoon. And usually when a champion loses their belt, it's in the contract straight away to do a rematch clause. Like most fighters have rematch clauses because you earned the title, which means you've naturally earned your right to a rematch should you lose it. And then they went on to do the rematch. I believe it was 3 or 4 months later, which is standard enough kind of a turnaround time. And I remember that it was on the undercard of Dylan White versus Alexander Povetkin. And that fight actually happened. It was during COVID, the pandemic, so they weren't doing arenas. They went into Eddie Hearn's back garden. And I say back garden, but it was really like a mansion with a massive back garden. It looked fantastic to watch. But that was the undercard of White versus Povetkin, and that was the night that Dylan White got ferociously knocked out by the heavyweight Alexander Povetkin. Um, and in this fight, it was different. So at the front, at the first fight, that Katie, she was having relative success, but she wasn't the normal Katie that people are used to. But in the second fight, Katie was far more composed and she used her boxing brain and she stuck to the basics because basics works best. And in this fight, from the first round, Katie rocked Pursoon. I believe it was 30 seconds into the first round. Pursoon was getting really frustrated because she had to work really hard, even just to land on Katie in the early round. Because Katie, her footwork is a massive credit to her because it allows her to get out of difficult situations if she's stuck against the ropes or if she's in the corner or if she's in the center of the ring. She's kind of got control of her ability to move wherever she wants just because of the quickness of her feet. And then in round 3, Pursoon was I mean, I don't know how Pursoon survived the third round because she was getting opened up left, right, and center, which resulted in her receiving a blooded nose from Katie. And then underneath her right eye, she received a seriously bad swelling to the point where they were kind of fearing was the doctor going to come in and do a doctor stoppage, but thankfully they didn't. Pursoon said she was okay to look out and she was continuing on. And obviously her coaches as well were watching from ringside, so they could see that she was still able to follow where Katie was in the ring. So obviously her eyesight wasn't too badly impaired, you know. Um, and that fight then it was a no brainer. Katie won it by unanimous decision, which basically means that all three judges agreed. And it's funny enough when I was listening to the interviews afterwards with the fighters, Pursoon agreed. She said, "Yeah, Katie won by far. She was the far better boxer compared to the first fight where Pursoon was so angry, so emotional." And I get that because you spend so long in training camps, you know, and then you're hoping to win. Then when you receive a loss, it's not nice because you have to bounce back from a loss. And yeah, it was a fantastic way for her to convincingly beat her opponent the second time and close out that chapter of her career in a way. You know, it's nice to kind of get uh I suppose clarity on a particular situation because you know the way media is kind of crazy. You could beat someone badly, but yet they'll always criticize what you didn't do rather than praise you for what you did do. And then moving on at the third fight, the third most significant fight that I believe that Katie had was with Amanda Serrano, who's a Puerto Rican seven division world champion. I remember that fight took place in Madison Square Garden for the undisputed lightweight world championships. I remember the fight well because I had to stay up till about 4 a.m. in the morning to watch it. And I remember it very well. But I do believe that it was actually the toughest fight of Katie's career. That Amanda Serrano, although she came up a weight, I believe she's featherweight, she came all the way up to lightweight and to fight Katie for her belts. Amanda Serrano was just yeah, it's so true what they say about Puerto Rican fighters. They just come with a different energy. They have a power that is unknown to most people, and she just really came in and was really incredibly tough in that fight for Katie to pin down. You know, from the first bell, though, it was an exchange between leather and leather for the whole fight. They were both, it wasn't like, you know, some fights for the first couple of rounds, fighters, they tend to, you know, test out their range and, you know, how are they responding to my feints and stuff. So you can kind of, on the third and fourth round, you begin to kind of lay off your punches, start throwing in your punches, you know. But from the first round, nah, they done away with that. And it was Katie Taylor's ability to dodge punches and then counter with a hook or jab that was key to her being able to win the fight, along with her loose footwork. Because Amanda Serrano has very stiff footwork movement because she likes to walk towards her opponents and stand in one position and kind of get them cornered into a particular place in the ring so she can kind of get control over them. And because Katie, her style of fighting is so aggressive, she's a combination boxer, which means she doesn't throw one punch, she throws three or four at a time. She was so exhausted though from round three. And then she was badly hurt in round five. And she was actually opened up by Amanda Serrano. There was blood pouring from her nose. And I knew she was really tired because she was clinging to Amanda Serrano so much. But I get it because by her clinging to, you know, hugging, as most people call it, by her hugging Amanda Serrano, it actually allowed her to regain her composure. Even though she was getting rocked badly, she kept giving while receiving punches. It was actually a phenomenal fight. That's another one to watch: Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor. Um, but Katie won that fight by split decision, which basically means it was two judges decided in the favor of Katie and one judge decided in the favor of Amanda. And I've no nothing to say on that. Only that I do believe Katie won. I believe Katie was the far busier boxer, and in boxing, a lot of the judges what they look for is your ability to respond when a fighter hits you or move when you're in a corner. Or you know, Katie was busy for the whole fight, even though half the time she didn't really have the energy to move certain ways. And then moving on, the fourth and fifth most important fight that I believe that Katie Taylor had, which are very relatively new in I suppose in memory's sake, they both happened last year in 2023. And it was the fight of between her and Chantel Cameron. And how the fight came about was Taylor was she was scheduled to rematch with Amanda Serrano because Jake Paul wanted the fight to happen in Crow Park, and there was all the talks. Oh yeah, it was going to happen. Da da da. But then Amanda Serrano, she got injured, and because Katie Taylor is who she is, maybe she's aware that she's getting old and she didn't want to be sitting around for too long. Um, she wanted to stay active. But then Katie does something that's kind of out of her character. You know, she posts stuff up on Instagram encouraging Bible verses or pictures of her training and stuff like that. But Katie went on Instagram and she called out Chantel Cameron, which is a very unlike her. And Chantel Cameron responded almost immediately. And I believe it was in the space of 3 or 4 days that that fight got settled, venue got booked, and it was announced the following week. So it was such a quick turnaround of events, which was fantastic. And it's amazing because that fight happened in the Three Arena in Dublin. And I've been waiting to look to go to see Katie Taylor fight since she turned professional. And they've just, unfortunately, they've never been able to get the fight in Dublin because in Ireland there's bad history with professional boxing. I remember the last time there was professional boxing happened, there was a shooting at the weigh-in, and unfortunately that gives it bad press. But thankfully this fight was able to happen in the Three Arena. But while that fight was happening, I was actually in Geneva in Switzerland at a youth retreat. One of my good friends, Jordan, invited me over there to come over and speak to his youth group on 2 nights. And I remember watching the fight live with Jordan and my sister and a few of my friends. And um, then there was friends back home. So obviously everyone in my church knows that I'm a Katie Taylor fan. So they were watching the fight as well. And they picked the wrong fight to watch Katie fight. Because I remember as I was watching the fight, I kind of just, I knew like 5 or 6 rounds into the fight that Katie wasn't going to win. She just no, she was just getting so badly beaten, you know. And everyone was like texting me like, "Joey, she's not even that good." And da, da, da. I was like, "Okay, you watched one boxing fight, relax." Like they didn't realize that Katie had stepped up a weight to fight Chantel Cameron for her titles, so it was a big step up, which means you're putting on more weight, and then you're receiving punches, but the punches have more power because someone has more weight, you know. Um, but in this fight, it was clear, like I said, it was a bad fight for Katie. She was overpowered, outclassed, and outboxed in every department for the whole fight. She had a small bit of success. She would land with a counter punch, but could never follow up with something significant. But the Irish crowd that night were absolutely sensational. Like as you're watching the fight on YouTube, should you choose to do so, like you can literally hear the crowd cheering and shouting every time Katie lands a punch, which is how you know every time she lands a punch. Um, but every time that Katie stepped into exchange, Chantal was always one step ahead of her and would catch her every time with a jab or a fury of punches of her own. So Katie likes to be in the center of the ring most of the time when she fights. But I remember from watching this fight, she was always around the ropes, always in the corner. She was never able to gain much control of the center of the ring. And unfortunately, that fight, Katie lost on majority decision. Um, and just to think then, one judge had it a draw. I'm a massive Katie Taylor fan, but I don't know what fight that judge was watching, but it definitely wasn't the Katie Taylor fight that I was watching. Chantal Cameron was far busier, landing better punches and just outclassed, outsmarted Katie Taylor. And Katie Taylor then, shortly after the fight, there was a rematch clause in the contract signed between the both of them. Um, and Katie reacted, she activated her rematch clause. She said, "Yeah, no, I'm going to fight again for the rematch." Um, and she was going to fight her at the same weight, which means that Katie was then going to be able to spar people at that weight and get more comfortable with that weight. And change her tactics going into the second fight. And I remember at the fight week for the second fight, you know, there was because it's a big emphasis on the Irish fighters because I remember the first time that Katie fought, there was Irish boxers like Gary Cully, Thomas McCarthy, and there was a few other Irish boxers there. And Gary Cully was the co-main event, and he lost to a guy, I believe his name was João Felix, Jose Felix. I think I might be wrong, but he lost to him badly. I mean, I think he got knocked out in the first or second round. So there was a lot of Irish boxers on that card that lost. So the second time around that this fight would happen again in Dublin, again, the Three Arena, there was all Irish boxers. Thomas McCarthy was there again. You had Gary Cully was the co-main event again, and then yeah, and he won the second time around, thankfully. But I remember in the second fight during fight week where they were doing the weigh-in and the public workout and the interviews and podcast. Katie Taylor was so calm all the way throughout workout and everything else, you know, and even when she was talking to the media, very gentle, not reading into stuff. She said, "Yeah, the better boxer won at the time. I went away and corrected problems, and now I'm back to get revenge. And she said a quote that week during fight week that I'll never forget. She said the following. She said, "Resurrection is in my DNA." And that turned out to be true because Katie then went on to have her best performance ever. I've been telling people recently that it's the best fight I've ever seen her in. You know, it's just a version of Katie that I suppose I forgot that existed, even as she gets older. You know, she won by majority decision. Her trainer got the game plan absolutely spot on. Katie was able to control the center of the ring. Her ability to throw in fury of punches and dodge, then go back again. She really was battering Chantel Cameron in a way that I didn't expect to happen. Um, and Katie was always the first to lead with the jab and move, combination, move. You know, it was just I wouldn't say a flawless performance, but it was an absolutely incredible performance that is definitely worth giving her praise for that, even though she's obviously older now and people are saying, oh, her speed is gone, her power is gone, you know, she's not able to knock boxers out. But she's not a knockout style of boxer. She's a combination boxer. She boxes with speed. And if you want to knock people out, speed doesn't do that, power does. And then because I've talked about the five of her most important fights that I believe, I want to talk about something that always struck me about Katie Taylor. You know, every boxer has their entrance. You know, when they're coming out to the ring, they'll wear like their boxing gown, or they'll have fireworks, or they'll have someone accompany them to the ring, or they'll have music. And music's a massive part of our lives, and it is a massive part of the boxer's entrance. But because Katie is a Christian, she has really been remarkable with her choice of music for her entrances. When she fought Natasha Jonas, she had a song called Champion by Bethel Music. And then when she fought another woman by the name of Karen Carabajal, she came out to a song called Lion by Elevation Worship. And then obviously when Katie was fighting Amanda Serrano in MSG, she had a song that she came out to call Awake My Soul by Hillsong Worship, which was incredible. I remember that atmosphere, and just to think that there was worship music playing and people were singing the words, but they didn't realize they were singing praises to the Lord. And then when Katie came out to Chantel Cameron for the first time, it was More Than Able by Elevation Worship. But what I loved the most is her entrance music to when she fought Chantel Cameron for the second time. Now, bear in mind, she's coming back off a loss, and this song she had was Raise a Hallelujah by Bethel Music. And I remember that when that song came on, Katie just, it was just incredible. It was, I'm going to sing in the middle of the storm, louder and louder. You're going to hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated. The king is alive. And I just, to see that song and then for her to go in and put on the performance that she did, it was absolutely astounding. Do you know? And I want to say this in closing. I know it was probably a short enough episode, but that's fine too. Sometimes you just have to kind of keep it choppy and straight to the point. Um, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart when I say this. If it wasn't for Katie Taylor, women's boxing wouldn't have the profile that it currently has. You think of people like Natasha Jonas, Chantel Cameron, Jessica McCaskill, Amanda Serrano, Clarissa Shields, Savannah Marshall. Um, I'm sure there's many other people. Uh, Caroline Dubois, you know, like I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head now. These boxers have been doing it for years, but they never had the profile that Katie had until now. Now they're all getting massive credibility because of what Katie has done. More people are tuning into women's boxing and getting involved, and just to think of that is incredible. Just the impact that she's had. Because I want to say this to you, Katie is a boxer, so she's what is in her hands is her ability to box. But what has God put in your hands? Why not allow this podcast to stir you in how you can glorify Him with your gifts and talents in your own personal life? And who knows whose life you could impact if you choose today to use your talents and gifts to glorify the Lord? You know, maybe you've just been treating that soccer training casually enough, or that singing that song, or writing that song, or that book you want to release. Release it, train for the glory of God, honor the Lord in everything you do, even in the preparation as well as the release, and just watch what the Lord might do through your life. How how the Lord might impact your life by you just saying yes to the gifts and talents He has. Yes, Lord, I want to release this for you. Yes, Lord, would you help me with this? And as a way to close, let me pray for you. I think praying at the end of this is so fitting. Lord, we thank you for today. We thank you for the gifts and talents that you have blessed us with. We thank you for the ability that you have given us every day to get up and take on each day for your glory. And Lord, for the listener today, whoever they may be, wherever they may be right now, Holy Spirit, would you minister to them? Would you prompt those areas where you've put those gifting and talents in their life? Would you draw those gifts and talents out of their lives so that they can use it to glorify you? Bring it out of their heart, Lord. Give them the grace, the confidence, and the courage to start that journey of honoring you through their gifts and talents today. And I pray, Lord, that may many hundreds, many thousands, many millions of people be affected in a positive way for the gospel in how they would use their gifts today to glorify you. We love you and we trust you in the wonderful name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Hope Sessions podcast. Did you enjoy the episode? Maybe did it encourage you or motivate you? Do you think that someone in your life could benefit or be blessed by this episode? If so, then why not send it to them? Lastly, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you use. This massively helps to spread the podcast literally all across the world. And don't forget that hope is to life as oxygen is to the body. God bless you and have a wonderful week. Take care.